I'm Jo Laurie. I'm one of the producers of One Life, which we're screening here at TIFF.
I'm James Hawes. I'm the director of One Life, which we premiered a couple of nights ago.
My name's Ian Canning. I'm also a producer of One Life.
And my name's Gilla Healy, and I'm also a producer on One Life.
One Life tells the story of Nicky Winton, who in 1939 went to Prague and was shocked by what he found with the refugees there and decided he had to do something about it. And then it's the story, played by Anthony Hopkins, of how he evacuated several hundred kids ahead of the Nazi invasion and how he lived with that through the rest of his life for a long time as a secret. And when that secret emerges, what that means for him.
So in 2010, my business partner and I, Emil Sherman and I, we went to meet Nicholas Winton. And we sat down with him and said, we would really love to option your life rights and to make a film about you. And he said, everyone who needs to know about me already knows, so thank you very much, but I don't need a film made about me. So we sort of were shocked, but we wanted to respect this incredibly humble, amazing human being. So we didn't, and we left that alone. And then Nicky then lived to 106, had a most incredible life, and his daughter had written a book about him, which had got his permission, and remembered our meeting, called us up and said, would we be interested in making a film about him? Well, we brought on Lucinda Coxon and Nick Drake to adapt the script, and then we had this very fortunate circumstances that, or the very daunting circumstance of Barbara Winton, Nicky's daughter, saying, I think Anthony Hopkins should play my dad, which is a pretty high bar for a producer to have to try and hit. But luckily he said yes, and once we had that piece of casting, we had to find our filmmaker, and luckily I'd worked with James on the first season of Slow Horses, starring Gary Oldman, and we went from there.
I grew up in documentaries originally. I've made several films about real events and real people, so I do find that area of filmmaking compelling anyway. And then it didn't take long for Ian to pitch me, this is the story, look at this YouTube clip, because it'll tell you everything you need to know. And to have that kind of historical story, but with such a clear and powerful emotional arc for an actor to play through it, and the idea that that might be Anthony Hopkins, I mean, what director's going to not be humbled to receive such a possibility? There is a YouTube clip from the 1988 That's Life programme. That's Life at the time was a top UK TV show. It got a quarter of the population watching every Sunday night. And Esther Ranson, its presenter and executive, brought onto the show Nicky Winton, who was arriving thinking he was going to be a historical advisor. The clip then shows what happens when he is introduced to some of the children, now adults, that he had saved and largely not met since Prague, because he'd left that piece of his history behind. And this quiet, humble, elderly man comes to terms with the enormity of what he had so modestly achieved.
We shot in 2 different countries. We shot for 15 days in the UK and 18 days in Prague. So splitting time there is hard, and obviously, making resources spread well in both countries is quite tough. But both countries offer incredible things, and Prague was obviously the place that where the film is set, and they're an incredibly proud country, and they're very proud of him and what he did there. So they were humbled and thrilled to be part of that story. So it was very important to be there and shoot in the actual locations.
I think on the kind of creative side, one of the things that we constantly had to think about was the fact that Nicky didn't see himself as a hero. He didn't really want to be portrayed as a hero, but of course we were spotlighting his story. And so constantly staying in touch with all the other people who helped in this mission, and remembering the children who were saved, but also thinking about the children who weren't. But really, it's a story about the past that has a lot to say about the future, and I think that was our North Star the whole time. We made the film while the Ukraine crisis was unfolding, and that became something that we were able to hang on to as storytellers.
We play Nicky in the 1930s and in the 1980s. Anthony Hopkins obviously plays the older version, and we have Johnny Flynn rather brilliantly playing the younger version. and the two worked with each other. Johnny came to set to see what sort of idiom and rhythm to his language Anthony was giving him. They talked about the gestures and what happens when Nicky gets stressed. Is it the same as a young man and an old man? And you'll see the details that both adopted. So I hope, because we cut several times between the two periods, it's a relatively seamless transition.
Well, I think just to talk about the Barbara's book about her father was only allowed to happen because Nicky, who wrote the foreword, said, just don't make me seem like I'm a superhero, because what I was able to do was because I was in the right place at the right time and I chose to do it and I could do it. And so his big fear with any sort of adaptation of his story would sort of make him seem superhuman. So I think we just tried to just deliver on that, to show that it was a sort of an army of the ordinary achieving something really extraordinary. And that was a really important thing as we started to develop it.
Well, we had a tone word, which was restrained, and we brought that into everything. So whether it was the pitch of the performance, or the lavishness of the dressing of a set, we wanted it to feel rooted and understated. The story has so much emotion and could so easily tilt into a quite sugary melodrama. We were just very anxious to hold that back. And Anthony's instinct when I first met him was that it should be restrained. He wasn't interested in something that was hagiographic, that was just over the top. And so we felt we were true to the story, we were true to the man, and that it gives it a much more real, lived-in feel as a film.
In the film, there's a little archive footage at the end where we see him. There's very little of him in the 50 years up to that moment, but then luckily when he was sort of rediscovered, there's lots of materials there, and there's lots of photographs of him around the kinder that he rescued. So there's a lot of that there.
I think, I guess, to just really take from what Nicholas Winton felt is that we've all got the opportunity to make a change or do the right thing or help other people who are in need, and it doesn't take a lot and it doesn't need to be a huge thing, but it can be something. And I think that's how he lived his life and what motivated him. And I think hopefully, without that seeming like a preachy thing for anyone seeing the film, I hope that just gently his humanity seeps into all of us, and then hopefully, even if it's a small thing, it's worth doing.
Very early on, we went on an initial recce, a couple of the producers and the designer and I, and we went to Prague Station, which is where the kids left from and where we were then going on to film. There's a statue of Nicky at the end of the platform with a child on his shoulder and another in his hand. It meant something to us, so we were all, of course, getting out our cameras and taking snaps of it, and suddenly there's a disturbance down the platform beyond. Police, people in high-vis jackets, a crowd, and we stopped to watch because it's quite noisy. Something's changed in the atmosphere, and we realized that it's a large group of arriving Ukrainian refugees, and it's just over Nicky's shoulder, and it gave us goosebumps. We all stopped and had a silent moment because things have changed and things haven't, and if there's a reason to be telling that story again, not to be preachy, it stands on its own right, but it certainly gave us a resonance.